Welcome to the Etsy Entrepreneur Podcast, where sellers can get help starting, building, and growing their Etsy business so that they can make extra money pursuing their passion. Are you ready to get the tips and strategies you need to be successful? Then let's get started. Here is your host, a top 1% full-time Etsy seller, LL.
All right, what is up? Welcome to episode 2 of the Etsy Entrepreneur Podcast. This is LL, owner of EtsyEntrepreneur.com. So I have another great episode for you guys planned today for our second podcast ever. If you missed the first podcast, you can check that out on EtsyEntrepreneur.com. It should also be showing up on iTunes relatively soon. It takes a few days, maybe a week to get approved, so I'm still waiting on that since it is so new, but it should show up on there soon. So today's episode, what I want to talk with you guys is about something that I get asked about nonstop. It's always one of the first questions that I get asked about with new Etsy sellers and returning or existing Etsy sellers rather, is traffic. How do I improve my traffic? And I'm not talking about the traffic that you may or may not be sitting in right now in your car if you're listening to this in your car. So hopefully that is not the case because that kind of traffic sucks. So the traffic that I'm talking about is obviously people visiting your Etsy shop. So traffic is good. It is the lifeblood of any e-commerce store, let alone Etsy. So it's something that we always want to make sure that we're working to improve because traffic should lead to sales. So sometimes it doesn't, and I will talk about that. But the key starting point number one is increasing traffic or getting good traffic in your store. And really traffic tells us a lot about our business, and it helps us diagnose things that we may not otherwise know to focus on. So I'm going to break this down for you guys and help explain it so it's something that you can work on in your business. And I know if you have a good understanding of traffic, you can make a lot of improvements and improve a lot of things in your business and improve your traffic down the road. So, all right. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what is traffic. So traffic to me and how I like to think about it is visits and views. So if you go in the stats tab in your Etsy shop, it breaks down traffic. You can see traffic by overall traffic in your shop and then traffic in each individual listing. And there's two major metrics that I look at, visits and views. So what that means is visits are, well, let's backtrack a little bit. Let's go to views first. So views are individual people looking at your shop items. So basically you could have one person, which is a visit, look at multiple items, which is views. So if you have one person that would show up as under visits as one, and then they look at 10 items, that would show up as 10 views, right? So how I like to look at it is, well, what I like to not look at is views really, realistically speaking, because it doesn't tell us a lot. I'm concerned with getting unique visitors to the shop. So I want to get as many visitors to my shop as possible. Now, hopefully they are looking at more than one thing. Hopefully they are buying more than one thing. But really visits tells us is the major metric that we want to focus on when we're talking about traffic. Views are good and stuff like that, but I wouldn't really pay a whole lot of attention in views. So when I talk about traffic, I'm talking about visits. This is unique visitors to your shop. So if you have 10 visits, that's 10 people that visited your shop. If you have 100 visits, that's 100 different people that visited your shop. I think now the same person could count as a visit more than once, but I think there's a gap of time. I'm not sure what that is, but it's really not going to skew stuff too much. So just consider it as one unique visit or one unique person is equal to a visit. That's how we want to look at our traffic. So what does traffic mean? What does visits mean? Well, really it tells us, how our shop is doing because we're going to break out visits. We're going to use that metric to figure out our conversion. Our conversion is basically the number, our sales number. What point are our listings converting at? What how many visits does it take for our listings to convert, if they are converting. All right. So we want to take that visiting number, and then you want to use your sales number to figure out your conversion. So the simplest way to do that, and keep in mind, you can do this for your whole shop or individual listings. Because at some point, you're going to have to break it out to your individual listings to see which ones are performing better. So, but just take your overall sales number and you divide that by visits, and that will get your conversion rate. If you don't have any sales, then your conversion rate is going to be 0, and we're going to talk about how to diagnose that as well. But you're going to figure out your conversion rate, and from there, it's going to tell us where to focus on in our shop, depending on what our visits are, what our conversion rate is. So what I like to focus on, the number that I like the starting point, the average that I like to give myself, is a conversion rate of 1%. So what that means, in simplest terms, is for every one sale, or it's taking 100 visits to get you one sale. So I like to start there. If it's taking you more than that, there's definitely problem areas that you need to focus on. Your conversion rate should be better than 1%. If it's not, there's going to be some areas that you guys should focus on in your shop to improve, to get your conversion rate above that 1%. So again, just take the total number of sales that you have and divide it by the total number of visits, and that is your conversion rate. And usually I figure this out, I figure out the lifetime conversion rate, your total number of visits lifetime. That's kind of where I would start at. But you can also do this in smaller periods of time if you want to do it for, the last month or the last couple of months. Especially if you have a good performing product, you can kind of see where it's trending. But that's more advanced stuff. I wouldn't worry about that right now. I would just focus on your basic lifetime conversion rate, and then it'll tell you where to focus on. All right, so here's kind of how to use that to diagnose your shop and hopefully improve stuff. So if you're getting if you're looking at your visitors, right, and you have low visits and no sales, or if you have low visits and you do have sales, then your conversion rate should be pretty good. But what I'm focusing on right now is if you have low visits and no sales. So if you have, just throw a number out there, it really doesn't matter. If you have 10 visits, 100 visits in a lifetime, whatever the case may be, if your visits aren't very good for your whole shop and your individual listings, and you have no sales, then there is definitely a traffic problem. So what that tells me is that you're not getting people to see your stuff. There's not people coming to your shop. They're not finding your stuff to even look at it, to even have the potential to buy. Without traffic, you're not going to have sales. So that tells me that you have an SEO problem. And by SEO, I mean search engine optimization. SEO is basically keywords that you're using for people to find your stuff. How are people searching to find your shop and find your listings? What keywords are you using? So you have to take a step back and say, well, I'm not getting enough people to my shop. I have a traffic problem, which is an SEO problem. So am I using the right keywords? Am I targeting the right audience? Maybe you're not using the right keywords to target the audience that is going to actually buy your stuff. So take a step back and think about your customer. Who's going to buy the stuff that you're selling? And are you using keywords basically describing that person? If you're not, change your keywords to describe that person. If you're trying to describe, if the people that are going to buy your stuff are moms and you're targeting teenagers, that's a problem, in the most broadest sense possible. I know I'm not using a very specific example there, but it's niche based. So depending on what you're selling, it really depends, what audience you're going to target. So just kind of take a step back and think about that. Also think about the quality of keywords that you're using. Are you using good keywords? Are they specific? Are they good quality? Are they too broad of keywords? So you want to make sure that your keywords are descriptive and not too broad with your targeting. So if you're selling a shelf and you're just saying shelf, I mean, that's really broad. What's the shelf made out of? Is there any stain on the shelf? How big is the shelf? So that should all be a specific set of keywords that you're using. Living room oak stained wood shelf, 12 inches. Living room 12-inch long living room oak stained shelf or something like that. Obviously, I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but just kind of think of how specific I can make the product that I'm selling. Gold pendant Mother's Day necklace. I'm not just saying necklace. I'm saying, it's a gold necklace, it's a pendant necklace, and it's a Mother's Day necklace. So think about who it's for, what it's made out of, and that will help you kind of break down a more specific keyword. So just a couple examples for you, just off the top of my head, but a lot of times you can go a little bit more specific with your keywords and not be as broad. Can you use more broad keywords? Yes, you can broaden out a little bit if it still applies. But if it doesn't apply to your necklace at all, or not your necklace, if it doesn't apply to your product at all, then don't use it. So, I see people that use keywords like for sale. I mean, that doesn't apply to your product at all. The chances are that someone types in for sale as a keyword and wants to find your product. Well, for one, they're not going to ever find it because there's going to be thousands and thousands of things that pop up. For two, the chances are super slim that they're looking for your exact product by typing for sale in the search box. So just keep that in mind. A lot of times if they are searching for sale items, they're going to use the attributes bar and go down, drill down to necklace or drill down to gold necklace or whatever. So just kind of keep that in mind. Make sure you're not using stuff that doesn't apply. That's not too broad. The last thing as far as traffic, make sure you're using enough keywords. You want to make sure that you're not using only a few keywords in your title and tag. Make sure you're using enough descriptive keywords to kind of fill out your title and fill out all your tags, because each keyword is a potential customer or potential audience looking for your product. So every keyword that you do not use, you're missing out on potential customers finding your product and being able to buy your product. So just kind of look at it that way, that you're targeting specific people and audiences with each keyword that you're putting in there. So you're going to make sure that you're giving yourself enough opportunities to be found to increase your traffic. All right, so that's kind of how to look at low visits to kind of diagnose what you're doing and increase your visits. And I have a lot of walkthrough videos on and courses on that specifically to help you out. If you go to EtsyEntrepreneur.com, in my course pack, my Growth Accelerator course pack, and my Growth Etsy 30-day Growth Challenge, I do have walkthrough videos showing you how to actually put in your keywords, how to set that up the right way, and some actual keyword growth strategies, because it's not... there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak, as far as strategies that you're using. So you shouldn't just do everything the same way for all your listings. There's a lot of different strategies that you can use, and a lot of different strategies that I've used, which I do share in there. So make sure you guys check that out if you want to see exactly what to do. All right, so next thing I'm going to focus on, if you're getting enough visits, right? If you're getting a high number of visits, but you're getting little or no sales, so your conversion rate is either 0 or less than 1%, you have a problem with your listings. That's what that tells me. So your SEO is probably pretty decent because you're getting enough traffic, but people are not buying your product for some reason. So you have to take a step back and say, well, there's people coming, but they're not pulling the trigger to buy my product. What's wrong with my listings? Well, there could be a number of things wrong, but this will help you diagnose kind of what's wrong, what to look at in your listing. All right, so maybe the first thing that I would kind of look at is maybe you have poor photos. Maybe your photography is not great. Is your lighting good on your photos? Do you have enough photos? Can people see your product from every angle? Can people imagine your product being used or being worn or where in the space? So kind of think of it that way. A lot of times I see just poor quality photos as far as lighting goes. So make sure you guys are using natural light. You can also get a light kit on Amazon that's pretty, if you have smaller stuff, that's pretty cheap, under $100 with the umbrella lights, and it just adds fluorescent light to your pictures. Make sure your background's not too busy. A lot of times I see people with selling jewelry or something like that, and they lay it on a dark background or a busy a busy background, maybe like a blanket that's really busy or like a piece of wood that's super busy. It kind of takes away from seeing the actual product that they're selling. So just make sure your background's not super busy. Your product should be front and center in your photos. The next thing that I would look at in your shop is your descriptions. Are you describing your product that you're selling? Do you have a good description? Are you describing who the product is for? What is it good for? What is it used for? Are you answering questions in your description? A lot of times you should have FAQs in your description, just answering questions before someone has to ask you. A good rule of thumb is if someone has to ask you a question or they don't understand something, they're probably not going to. They're just going to move on and buy from someone that answers their question. A lot of times they just assume you're not going to reply in a timely manner. Not to mention, if they're ready to buy, they're ready to buy. They don't want to take the time to reach out and wait for a response. Even though you may respond quick, they don't know that, and they just assume that. So make sure you're looking at your description. The next thing I would look at is your price. Is your item priced too low or too high? A lot of people assume that their item may be priced too high, but they forget that it may be priced too low. Etsy is all about selling unique, high-quality, handmade stuff. If you're selling your stuff cheap, people are going to assume that it's cheap. So maybe you need to raise your price if you're selling high-quality stuff. On the other hand, it may be too high. It may actually be too high. So you may have to lower your price. So try some different pricing strategies. Look and see what your competition is doing. However, it doesn't mean just because your competition is doing one thing that you should do that same thing, especially if you're selling something that's super unique, that there's not a lot of competition out there. You may be able to set your own pricing. If you're spending a lot of time in your investing in making your stuff, and it is super high quality, charge a lot for it. Charge enough for it. Don't be afraid to charge a high price because people are getting a high quality item. So just don't be afraid to just set those prices high. I'll do a future lesson on pricing because that's a whole nother animal, how to price your stuff. But that should give you an idea of kind of how to look at that. Perceived quality, maybe the way that you're presenting your item, it's perceived as poor quality, and that can be in your photos, your description, your pricing. Like I said, if your item's too cheap, they may assume it's cheap. So just think about how you're presenting your product. Is it perceived as a poor quality or a lower quality item? The last thing is shipping times. Maybe your shipping times are too spread out. So and within reason, keep in mind, if you're making this stuff to order and it does take you a week to make it, then you would want to set your shipping times at a week. But if your stuff doesn't take that long to make, and you're setting your shipping time out 1 to 2 weeks, people aren't going to buy from you. So just make sure you're shipping your stuff out as fast as you can possibly do it, as fast as you can get it out. The sooner the better. Within reason, like I said, you don't want to kill yourself if it takes you, a week to make it, and you're setting your shipping times, earlier than that. That's going to be hard to fulfill. So on the flip side, if your shipping times are 1 to 3 days or 3 to 5 days, and it's taking you a week to make your stuff, that stuff's going to be late. So you're going to create a poor customer experience. So just be careful of that too. Your shipping time should be as fast as possible within reason to what you can actually do. But that's one thing that you want to keep in mind, and that is important to people, especially around the holidays and stuff like that. People wait to the last minute, so just make sure your shipping times are accurate and up to date as far as what you guys can do. So that's pretty much how I break out, using your conversion, using your visits to see where to focus on in your shop. This is something that a lot of people don't have a good understanding of. They just, my traffic is not good, or I want more traffic. Well, it gets a little bit more deeper than that. When you're talking about traffic, you got to think about what the traffic is telling you, and what to focus on in your shop to improve the traffic, improve your conversion, and make those areas your focus. And then in return, you will improve your traffic, you will improve your sales. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense, and gives you some ideas of what to look at in your shop and what to focus on for the future. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with, I'm going to include in the show notes another freebie. This is the 3-step traffic and sales growth formula that I've used to actually grow my traffic and sales. It's a quick, super easy to read, super quick read, 1-page document of some very basic strategies that you guys can use to increase your traffic, increase your sales, and kind of work that stuff into your workflow. Like I said, it's very basic stuff. It's not advanced stuff, but it is free and you should check it out. I will include it in the show notes in case you guys don't have it. Click on it, and it's a free download for you. Outside of that, I will look forward to talking with you guys next week. And if you guys are looking for more advanced growth strategies, things that I've done to grow my shop to the top 1%, definitely check out EtsyEntrepreneur.com. I have my Growth Accelerator courses on there. I have my 30-day challenge going. Lots of good stuff in there. I've included everything in there that I've used to start, build, and grow my shop to make your lives easier, so you don't have to go through the same struggles that I did when I first started, not having those resources and having to figure it out for myself. But until next time, have an awesome day, everyone, and happy selling.